Dreams and Schemes, Journey to MLM. Dreams of gold. In 1913, at 26, a rather mature age for a young man in that era, Karl Renborg left his parents and the family business in South Carolina to travel by train to Seattle, Washington. His final destination, Alaska, where deep veins of gold were said to be awaiting intrepid and determined prospectors. Renborg's hope-filled journey was part of what historians have called one of the largest voluntary migrations in history at that time. News spread widely about discoveries in Alaska, which became a U.S. territory in 1867. More than 100,000 wealth seekers flocked to Alaska and Klondike in Canada's Yukon. Fewer than 4,000 prospectors found any gold, and even fewer actually became rich. The famed Alaska Gold Rush was one of America's legendary get-rich chapters, in the league with an earlier California gold discovery, and followed by booms in Florida real estate and the ballooning stock market in the 1920s. Writer Jack London is the most famous adventurer who searched for Alaska gold. He did find gold, of a sort, and wrote popular novels, including Call of the Wild, based on his experiences. According to the Neutralite story, Karl Renborg was inspired by London's quest and took the same voyage 16 years later. Upon arriving in Seattle, Renborg quickly learned that while the gold in Alaska was real, the widely held belief in the opportunity for wealth, the very motivation for his trip, was false. The boom was over. He was too late. Prospectors were no longer striking it rich, but rather were, quote, working like slaves for mere ounces of the metal. Some, like Renborg, abandoned the venture quickly, while others stayed and moved from place to place as news broke of yet another strike. As is now widely known, the real money in this and other gold rushes was not in gold itself, but in selling to gold seekers supplies, tools, transportation, anything that fed their hopes. Renborg's ill-fated trip was a typical folly, yet perhaps like the ventures of many others, his journey did lead to other unexpected discoveries. Renborg learned of another wealth opportunity while in Seattle, not in gold, but in commerce, in the newly opened and still mysterious China. He made plans to go there after returning to the East Coast, where he could gather the means. Karl Renborg's decision to travel to China in search of business opportunity, like the plan to discover gold in Alaska, was in no way original for the time, but part of a large-scale movement. Only a little more than a decade before, the United States government had aggressively announced to the world that it intended to enforce an open-door trade policy toward China. Europe, Japan, and Russia had all signaled intentions to seize land and control lucrative markets inside this vast country. England had forcibly opened markets during the so-called Opium Wars. The whole world was eyeing China for new wealth, and Karl Renborg, like many others, caught the get-rich spirit. In the U.S., as the American frontier was closing, natural resources were already exploited, and trusts started taking over vast areas of commerce. The prospect of sales opportunities in China revived the spirit of ever-expanding capitalism, not unlike a later era of open door that began for American business in China in 1978. While Renborg was too late for gold in the Pacific Northwest, his timing in China was better. Of the tens of thousands of men and women who headed west in search of the fabled gold opportunity, many were impelled strongly by frustration, personal failures, and a general sense of receding opportunities in the eastern U.S. Renborg was no exception. His work life began in the employ of his parents, who sold handmade souvenir jewelry and paintings to the wealthy in Gilded Age vacation sites along the East Coast, such as St. Augustine, Florida, and the Golfing Center of Pinehurst, North Carolina. There, his biography informs, young Carl met people he viewed as America's highest and best. He adopted them as role models, including, quote, the DuPonts and Morgans and Mellons. Like the iconic character Jay Gatsby in F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, Renborg reportedly was inventing a, quote, dashing personality and writing down what he viewed as, quote, rules for self-improvement, addressing his own diary as if to an alter ego as, quote, old book when he made entries. His rules, as his son noted admiringly in the biography, were aimed at impressing others, rising in status, and attracting women. Renborg's job was in the sales and marketing of his parents' handmade crafts. Yet, as he stated in his journal, business has been so poor for 2 years, and I have been so little of a man that Dad and I amicably concluded that I would reap benefit from working for someone else. Renborg's first real job outside the family's business lasted only a few weeks. He was reportedly fired for being unable to motivate the factory workers he was supposed to be supervising. He went back to work for his father. In a short time, though, he was sent off to New York under parental patronage to attend a jewelry design school. But, according to his biographer, he harbored a deeper interest in becoming an actor. Renborg lasted less than a year in jewelry design. He did not leave to pursue an acting career, but instead launched into another profession as inventor. His first invention, developed with an unnamed partner and described as a, quote, revolutionary flooring material made out of melted rubber, sawdust, and other special ingredients. It was fireproof. It was waterproof. People told him it was a good and surefire success. Renborg envisioned, quote, covering the floors of the world. Unfortunately, as the first installation revealed, the product had a serious flaw. It cracked. The project was abandoned. Returning home to his father, who was now a widower and living in Camden, South Carolina, the young Renborg enrolled at the University of South Carolina in the fall. He was now 26. By the next spring, he quit school. It was his final encounter with formal education of any kind. It was at this point, 1913, when Renborg set off from South Carolina to Seattle seeking gold, which eventually led to his new plan to go to China and pursue mythic business opportunities. He was consumed, his filial biographer wrote, with a belief that his destiny is to blaze new trails. China Dreams.